Hi, my name is Gibson. I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video. And in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how many breakups is too many breakups. So this is a question that I see all the time. And the first part of my answer to this would be based on a few key things. Number one, what has happened between the last time you broke up and now? And this is a huge component as to whether a relationship will work or not. And what I mean by this is, as a general rule, of course, if you're breaking up and getting back together in sort of a cyclical pattern, I mean, what that really insinuates is that both of you have triggers that are being poked by one another. And we actually have in a lot of depth in a course called How to Repair Any Relationship, we talk about something called primary and secondary trigger patterns. And so that How to Repair Any Relationship course, you can actually check out for free using the link below for 7 days, if you want to check it out. And the idea between primary and secondary trigger patterns and how they work is this concept where it's basically like my biggest core wounds and your biggest core wounds trigger each other. So let me give you an example of this. I worked with a couple once, and we'll call them Anne and Bob. And Anne had this big core wound of feeling unheard. And Bob had this big core wound of fearing abandonment. And he kind of assumed like everybody was just going to leave him. And so Anne, when they would have a conflict in the relationship, would try to bring up stuff with Bob. And Bob would just jump to the conclusion that he was going to get left. And he would go, "Oh, you're just leaving? Fine. Just leave. It's fine." And he would go right into the abandonment core wound. But guess what would happen to her wound of feeling unheard? Well, she would feel cut off. She'd feel like, I can't even talk to him because he just goes right there to the relationship being over. And we can't resolve things. So she felt more and more unheard. So then she would bring up stuff more or in a more unhealthy way because she would get frustrated, which would then further lead Bob to thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be abandoned. So every single major close relationship has a primary trigger pattern and a secondary trigger pattern, these places where we trigger each other. Now, all these things can be reconditioned. All these things can be transformed. It doesn't have to stay this way, but gaining insight into our own trigger patterns and into our partners or loved ones is very useful. Now, with that being said, if you are in a relationship dynamic where you aren't resolving your trigger patterns, you are likely to keep breaking up and getting back together, right? Because you may love and care for each other and have a lot of feelings there. But eventually those trigger patterns become so painful when they get pressed on back and forth that it creates frustrations and then ultimately leads to a breakdown in a relationship. So much of what's really empowering is when we can start to isolate these patterns and start to resolve them by reconditioning, by being aware of them, finding new ways to communicate about them, understanding them about one another. So ultimately, just as an example, going back to Bob and Anna or Anne, all you have to do, right, and it was quite simple in this case. I mean, each of them have to work on that wound within themselves as well. But, just a tweak in their communication where Anna could start off her dialogue by saying, "Hey, I'm really happy with our relationship. I'm not going anywhere. I really want this to work, but I want to share something with you so that we can grow through this and move through this because it's been weighing on my heart." Just by starting off that way, she bypasses his core wound of assuming abandonment, right? Because she gets that out of the way first. So there's actually really easy steps you can take to just mitigate these pain points ahead of time. But anyways, going back to this whole discussion, how many breakups is too many? I mean, when people come into my office, the biggest thing I look for is, are both people willing to do the work? And I'm really going to say at the end of the day, like if both parties are willing to do the work, I really believe that transformation is possible. And if you have the right tools, right, you have to be targeting healing at a subconscious level. You have to be reconditioning in order for healing to really take hold. And I've got other videos on this, but that's part of what the whole school is premised off of, is like how to target our patterns at the subconscious roots, recondition them there, and everything else will follow more naturally. So that has to be happening for true healing to take place. Obviously, I would say if people are breaking up and getting back together and there's no changes in communication, there's no targeting of root cause, there's no reconditioning of patterns, then I think somebody breaks up and tries to get back together. If you haven't changed those key features first, like, hey, sat down together, had a conversation to say we broke up. We don't want to just get back into the same relationship with the same subconscious patterns that are just going to create friction with each other again and eventually cause us to have to move in the other direction. So what can we do differently? What needs weren't met? What boundaries were violated? What pain points were there? What were your triggers? And what do you need from me when those things show up? And vice versa. If those conversations aren't happening, then one breakup and getting back together is too many. If those conversations you both learned right now in this video, and you've had breakups in the past, I mean, by doing things differently, there's a chance that things can reconcile. Ideally, we're not having to go through this pinball of events. I'm definitely not sitting here recommending that you just keep getting back together with people who are breaking up with you. But I am going to say the only context I really look for historically when working with people in my personal practice was, I don't mind about the history too much. I mind that we can isolate your patterns at a subconscious level. We can get really clear about communicating them to others. And then we can do the deeper work. We can communicate differently. We can recondition the patterns and we can gain more insight and understanding into one another. And as long as both parties are fully committed, that's where the magic can really happen. So I wanted to answer this question because I saw it so many times popping up. I hope that makes sense. If you are going through these sort of breakup cycles, if it's a fresh breakup, we have a really in-depth course called How to Heal from a Breakup. It's all about the steps you need to actually recover a lot more quickly, gain a sense of closure, have a sense of peace, let stuff go in a shorter period of time by targeting root causes of what causes us to hurt over a breakup, where the grief is really rooted in. And if you are trying to repair a relationship that's on the rocks and you want the actual tools, our How to Repair Any Relationship course is designed to give these to you. It talks about primary and secondary trigger patterns as a deep dive into reconditioning, into the new context of things, boundaries we need to have, conversations and dialogues that need to take place. Then you can actually check both out for free for 7 days using the link below. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you for watching and for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.